Today's guest is Lindsay Major. Lindsay is the Chief Experience Officer for the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC. In 2023, Major was honored with the Nashville Emerging Leader Award for Arts, Entertainment, and Music Business, and she was named a finalist for the Music Business Association's Next Gen Now One to Watch Award. Lindsay, thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me.
I think as I was preparing for this one, I was excited for multiple different reasons. One, it's just always to have a good friend on the podcast, because you generally know what your friends do, but you don't actually know what your friends do. So this is a great opportunity to just kind of dive in for me personally and just like figure out what it is exactly that you do. Two, I don't know anything about the music industry. And so I'm excited about that. I'm hoping that you can enlighten me. My fiance, right now, by the time this podcast is released, she'll actually be my wife. We've got a wedding coming up. She works in the music industry, but you know, we don't dive too much into the specifics. So this is a good opportunity for that. And then the last reason, or the last reason I'm going to announce anyway, is I think you might have my dream title, um, because that I don't know what it entails. We're going to dive into that, but it just sounds amazing. When I'm at my best, or when the company's at the best, I'm spending a majority of my time thinking about what we call our investor journey. And I think there's going to be some overlap here. So maybe let's just start with, who you are, how you got here, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'd like to hear. That's a good question. Yeah, so I actually have a little bit of a unique journey into where I am now. So I moved to Nashville 10 years ago now. Went to Ohio State, my MBA. The goal was to always work in the music industry. For coming out of my MBA, that wasn't my reality. At the time, Lyft, the rideshare company, had moved to Nashville. Or they moved in office to Nashville. And I actually took a job there. I couldn't find a job that would pay the bills in the music industry. And I was like, this will be a pit stop. I'll do this for a little bit until I find my music industry job. Went to Lyft, actually started off on recruiting, and fell in love with like the whole idea of being a startup in the tech space and kind of stayed at Lyft. And that's where I started kind of learning my new passion of designing world-class experiences for people. Because in recruiting, it was all about candidate experience. How do we get into the pipeline quickly, make them want to work here, and kind of start diving into there's a lot more underneath this in terms of when we talk about experience. And that's when I sort of elevated my skill set, got my Six Sigma black belt, and just started understanding people in a way, or it's like what motivates people, how do you empathize with them, see where they're coming from, meet their needs, where they are. All that stuff is really fascinating to me. So at that point, I moved into customer experience world, specifically at Lyft and the driver experience. Really understanding pain points in the app, how we design those out of the app, how can we automate help where we can, and then at the end of the day, somebody doesn't reach out, how do we still provide that world-class experience? Because no one wants to reach out to the support team. Reaching out to them, you gotta create a journal. So how do we let people out, in a great space when they don't need to do that, but if they do, they're still wild and delighted and they still come back. So from Lyft, I went to Small Direct Cloud, did a lot of new product testing, user sentiment testing. And so I was still kind of in that startup tech area. Went to another startup for a guy boss, was head of customer strategy for them. I recently bought the news. And then I was in this COVID happened. So I was unfortunately impacted by layoffs at very boss between impacts of COVID and it was a small startup. It was like, okay, you can take your severance or you can do the sales job. Sales is for me. So I took the severance. Something happened and I was like, what am I going to do though? And a recruiter reached out to me about the MLC, which was brand new at the time. You literally just started. The legislation had just passed. The MLC was just designated to administer the blanket license. And this recruiter reached out and was like, there's a CX job in the publishing side of things. And I had never seen that in the music industry because customer experience isn't really something that historically the industry is focused on. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. But it all hadn't worked out. I started as head of customer experience, and now I'm the chief experience officer. So it was a sort of a unique journey to get I came full circle. I'm super passionate about customer experience, service design with the customer, and it's now work in an industry that I was intending to work on. Not this side of it, but it's fascinating how complicated publishing is. Yeah, that's kind of how I got here a little bit.
It's crazy how those things kind of happen sometimes. Even though you come out of college or leave a career and think you want to be in something else, and you end up finding your way back into it or finding something that maybe fits you better. Let's dive into the MLC and just give listeners an idea of what exactly it does, right? So if you look it up, you're going to see the word royalty, and a lot of us know what that is, and we hear it tossed around. But what I was fascinated about when preparing for this is that there's just like so many different types of royalties and so many different ways that folks get paid. So if you could just give us like a high level overview of
Sure.
MLC and what that means.
Yeah, so MLC is short for the Mechanical Licensing Collective, or what you call a collective management organization. So we're responsible for a specific set of royalties, collecting that money and paying them out to the proper rights holder. That could be a songwriter, a publisher, administrator, whoever has the copyrights to those songs. So the MLC was born out of the passage of the Music Modernization Act in 2018, landmark piece of legislation that really changed the way streaming royalties work, because we are specifically in what is called digital audio mechanical royalties. That is created from when songs are streamed on services like Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or digitally downloaded. So and it's interactive. So it's the experience of I'm on Spotify, I choose what I want to listen to when I want to listen to it, versus non-interactive streaming, which is like internet radio, for example. So we were selected as the sole administrator of the newly created blanket license. What we mean by blanket license is that it's one license that covers all usages on platforms. Before 2018 and this passage, every song had to be individually licensed to be used on that platform. To put that in perspective, we have over 33 million songs in our database, and songs often have multiple recordings. So I think Spotify recently has reported that they have upwards of 80 million sound recordings. So really the services were in this space where that's not scalable. They're not paying people because they didn't know who to pay, not intentionally. It just was really hard to do. So this blanket license was created. It covers all usages. The services get the license from us. They're then have to report all of their data usage data to us on a monthly basis. We do all the analysis, the matching, figure out who needs to pay what for the song usages. We pay them. So we get the data, we get the money, and we figure out who needs to get paid what. And it's
So
really fantastic.
in terms of when we dive into customer experience from the perspective of the MLC, your customer is the creator. Is that correct?
Yeah, our customer, and it's sort of unique because we don't technically have a definition customer. We have a free service, it's nonprofit, and you have to get paid by us. There is no competitor in the space. So we refer to them as our members, but they are the rights holder. So ultimately, yes, it is the creator who gets the creator of it. One of a right holder can be a songwriter who's maintained their rights and they're self-administering. It can be their publisher who has, is responsible for that. It could be a publishing administrator. Ultimately, the goal is that the money gets to the creator.
Yeah. And then and maybe this isn't a question for you and someone else in your organization, and you can tell me if that's the case, but what's the check and balance on these streaming platforms in terms of whether or not they're giving you the data that they should be giving you?
Yeah. So we do have a lot of analyses that run monthly. It's a lot of data that we're ingesting. And it actually takes this study. We pay monthly, but it's a 75-day cycle because that's how long it takes to ingest the usage data, match it properly to the works in our database, and pay it out. So there are a lot of checks and balances. It's not the team that I'm directly on, but we've got several team members who are watching trends. So, for example, like we noticed that so a certain artist is performing really well on Spotify, but maybe on another platform they're super low, and like that anomaly is strange, right? Because you think We're going to have extend share everything we do before we want always. So there's certain like trends that they track to make sure that we're getting the proper data. There's also specific requirements that we have and how the services report their data to us. So there's a whole team that really focuses on holding the services accountable to their reporting, their payment. There are like some like different we can find the services that they're late on payment. There's things like that we have within the law that we can do to hold them accountable.
And is this so the Music Modernization Act, I think is what you called it, is that
Mm-hmm.
right? 2018. Does that address this new world of AI in any way, or do you guys even touch that?
So we have to wait because of it's all government mandated. We are waiting on the Copyright Office to kind of put down the rulemaking when it comes to AI. There are certain like basic laws in place now. For example, a work that is 100% created with AI is not a copyrightable work. Therefore, you can't collect these royalties on it. But there's a lot of gray area, and unfortunately, what tends to happen is that the government is behind innovation, technological innovation, which is what we're seeing happen with AI. So you've got it's a really interesting conversation, and we can't really, we have things in place to try to track, like, okay, this is an AI generated work, but then you get into the gray area of, well, maybe the only part of it is AI generated, and part of it is the songwriter. Like, there's some human authorship. So technically, it's copyrightable, but to what extent, or what are the rules if I use ChatGPT to write a verse or whatever? Like, it's those nuances that's like we're really trying to wait for the Copyright Office on guidance and how we're gonna manage that. So yeah, it's that it's a floundering conversation that we're
Yeah, I can imagine wanting to get in front of that one. I mean, just from my own usage, right? Like it's all about how you prompt the technology. Not to go down a tangent, we can go to customer experience here in a second, but it's all about how you're prompting it. So there is a human element to it, but we are in this transition period of, um, you know, it there's still the artificial intelligence aspect to it as well. So it is kind of unique, and I've definitely noticed it in my own experience of like just writing works for our website or something, like a blog, or writing out the social media posts for the posts for the podcast. It's like, well, yeah, maybe I use it sometimes, but it was still me that was giving the prompt, or
yeah.
like somehow reacting with it. But that's a whole nother tangent for a whole nother day. Let's dive into the customer experience world that you operate in. And let's start with, because I think this is a very important distinction. What is the difference between customer experience and customer service?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, oftentimes people look at you and think they're the same thing. Customer experience is the end-to-end experience, like that customer has all the interactions that they're going to have with your company, from discovery, like either on Instagram or whatever, from that interaction to um, browsing your website, to selecting the product, to buying the product, to receiving it, in 5 to 7 days, whatever. That entire journey is customer experience. All those interactions, all those touch points. Customer service is one element of the experience, because you and I agree digital experiences, everybody has one. But at the end of the day, when somebody needs help, the customer service, are those individuals that are able to resolve problems or the rough points that people are experiencing within the entire ecosystem of what you sell.
Yeah. So then I love to find, I come from a corporate world. I work with a team of 7 or 8 right now. So it's not the world that I'm in right now. But I come from a corporate world, and I love how in the corporate world, for efficiency, I understand why, but everything gets broken out into departments. But it seems to me like customer experience would be one that overlaps with a lot of different departments. Has that kind of been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, yes, we have a department that is responsible for the outcomes of this team, but it's everybody's responsibility, right? Because like every business process that happens, no matter what, is going to impact your customer. And I think people kind of sometimes don't get that, right? Like I'm on the finance team. What I do doesn't matter. Well, it does, because if someone doesn't get a payment or they're paying bills or whatever, like whatever processes you follow as a team member that impacts your customer, that's like your responsibility. So I think, yeah, like we and the sheer amount, like I interface with everybody at the MLC. There isn't a single team that, you know, isn't doing something that could ultimately impact our members. So it's definitely collaborative. It's definitely everybody's responsibility. And really, you know, I'm kind of there when we're designing these business processes, for example, behind the scenes. It's like if you're not directly interacting with your customers, we're keeping them at the forefront. Really, everything you do you should have your customer in mind and how it's going to impact their experience. But it's easy to kind of forget about that if you're not directly interfacing with them all the time. So it's like I can get in a habit of how can I make this process easier for me versus how can I make this process easier, more streamlined for us to execute, but not putting barriers or any sort of like unfavorable experience on our customer. We don't want to put our like make our life easier with something bad on customer experiences. The minute you have friction in there, there's no go smell.
Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit and talk about, you know, almost kind of removing yourself, right? So 'cause I do think a lot of times, specifically with, well, I mean, small and large teams, I guess, but you know, we're incentivized to be more efficient, and so the easier that we can make our job, um, you know, the better for our compensation, for our work life, whatever. So how do you go about kind of removing yourself from that and looking at it through a different lens, you
Yeah,
know, to be the user and not so much internally speaking, whether it be you or someone from your team or whatever?
yeah, it's a great question. I think it all goes back to kind of the voice that this concept called voice the customer. So and really kind of being willing to hear what they're saying, understand that everybody experiences the world in their own way. There's lots of micro, macro level factors, personal experiences, uh, experiences with technology. Like everybody has their unique way of how they're operating in the world. And you've really got to be able to kind of understand and empathize with where people are when they're interacting, but different media and lay out for them. Like, what are their experiences? How are they reacting to that experience? Listen to what they're saying, understand the words that they're saying. Are the words that they're saying like actually what you're understanding? Because what I could be saying could be different than how you're understanding it, and just kind of being able to put your own pride and be like, I hope this kind of thing has something to love it. Well, because you built it for you and not for the people that you're serving. So you really got to kind of be able to take your ego out of it, listen to that feedback, and people maybe sometimes take feedback a little too personally. It's not about you. Feedback is always not about you as an individual or like a commentary on how you perform. It's just this is what these are the facts of the situation, empathizing where people are, and then saying, okay, here's how we can sit it to improve that experience. Um, it it can be challenging in this world, but the full feedback loop of it is so critical in terms of designing experiences and processes and systems that work well for the business and the customer. Um, but I mean, if you're not open to feedback in general and just really and not taking it personally, it can be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think, at least from my experience, again, as you said, everyone has their own experiences, but from my experience, everything is changing so quickly too that feedback loop is just absolutely constant. And what worked in 2021 on our side of the world in our industry isn't what works in 2024. How are you constantly receiving that feedback, measuring it, understanding it, and then evolving?
Yeah. Yeah. And even like take that a step further, you know, it's not sorry if I was told you before, but even like different like different archetypes, mindsets that your customers have. Like what works for this customer base is not necessarily going to be the same for this one. So it can get very, very complicated very quickly. Um, I think, there's a lot of ways that you can gather that data, and it's really important to gather both qualitative and quantitative data. So the qualitative piece being like surveys or um, people are very vocal on social media, like kind of reading those things and really digesting what they're saying and why they're saying it, what the sentiment is, um, what mindset that this person, what archetype do they fall in, how to being really, really curious and asking those questions and being willing to dive into the things people are saying and the experience that they're having. The quantitative part being more like, these SLAs, KPIs, like how quickly are they responding? How often are people failing at a certain point in the process? Like, for example, if you're registering to work with us, we know exactly how long it takes different types of people to register via different methods and why are they getting stuck here. And it's just you have a lot of ways, a lot of different data that you can gather. It's important that you're gathering the right data, you're measuring the right things, because measuring stuff just to measure it is not helpful. Like you gotta learn from it, and then be able to say, okay, let's analyze this for what it is, prioritize accordingly, because everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So prioritize kind of accordingly, and then continue to measure. Like you come here for good plan you implement these improvements, and then you continue to measure the output and make sure that that was the right call. So it may not have been the right call, but your customers will tell you exactly what to do. So I want to listen to it, understand how to facilitate, like, especially when you have a diverse customer base, which most people do, and then be willing to adapt quickly when perhaps something fell out of the controls that you put in place.
Yeah, so let's stick with that diverse customer base for a second, because I do think it's important when thinking about the customer experience. It can be very challenging, as you said earlier, to fit it to the masses, right? Because what one customer wants, what one client wants, what one investor wants, whatever, may not be what the other wants. For instance, and this is just an example from my experience, feedback for one investor, maybe we want more communication from, and this is like the most simplistic form possible. From another investor would be, I don't want you blowing up my inbox with not with nonsense, right? Like, don't give me the things I don't need to know, only give me what I need to know. And so you're constantly battling those two desires, more and less. And where's that balance? So for you and your job, maybe more specifically, how do you balance those different desires across your customer base?
Yeah, that's kind of the hard part. Is really understanding who your customers, your members, your affiliates, but however you identify, um, who they are, what mindset. I've kind of alluded to this concept of mindsets a few times. So mindsets is a very inclusive approach to service design or designing experiences. You're mapping your users up on a scale of uh, like fundamental motivations and what drives them and emotional motivations. Kind of, it's a more holistic approach to creating those archetypes that, so it's more about like, what's important to me? Why am I doing this? How am I going to react to this thing versus more traditional, like in the tech space, you've probably heard of personas, where you're kind of your name, age, gender identity, other fixed demographics, and it's not quite as inclusive, and you're missing people when you design that way. So we like to go on mindsets where we've got folks who are traditionally very jaded, but in the music industry, a lot of people had some poor experiences, just by way of for a lot of reasons. And so it's like you've got folks who are more skeptical, jaded, they need that extra assurance and they want to call us and they want you to walk them through every single thing. We've got other people who grew up in the tech space and they're very comfortable here and they want to interact with the chatbot and they don't want to talk to you and they want to, and so you kind of map it out in terms of these archetypes and say, okay, how are we addressing all these unique needs? Or even for us, it's like self-admitted songwriter serving that group is vastly different than serving her publisher group. You've got people who are all over the spectrum of know nothing about publishing to kind of business savvy, and a publisher that's their job. So and they want to interact with you differently. And there was an architect set for that word. So kind of taking this holistic approach instead of trying to say, okay, you're the songwriter and your name is in your black firm role, your job is like being too specific and broadening that and being able to say, okay, this group of people is motivated by these things. This is their emotional reaction to, and this is how I want to reach out. Being able to kind of build experience around that more mindset has been really helpful for us. Um, I think too, consistently like revisiting our customer journey maps and saying, okay, when they're going on a work registration journey, here's all the touch points that possible point of failure and what automated solutions can serve up to people and while you know they're in mid stuff. What are the things we need to design the process all together because you know it's a problem. And just kind of being willing to have those conversations and get into it has been critical for our success.
Yeah. So it's you brought up the word automation. So I want to dive in on that for a second because it's been my experience, and again, that's all I can speak to, right? That people are craving human interaction right now. Um and sometimes that's obviously, possible, but there's also ways to use AI or use other things to try to automate tasks or processes. How do you guys think about that in terms of, okay, well, this is something that we can automate, or this is where the touch point needs to be from a human interaction level?
Yeah, that's a great question. Especially, I think, well, the biggest like rule of thumb for me when we're talking about automation, we're talking about AI, is in the service element at least, is that you can't completely remove the human interaction piece out of it. You just can't. It's not only is it impersonal to just make everyone talk to a robot, it's like how frustrating is it? You hit a chat and they send you like 3 prompts. You're like, that's not at all what I asked. Just give me to a human. Like that can be a really, really frustrating experience. So you have to give people the opportunity to connect with a human. And like and it's like 80 per I think I read recently in a consumer reports 80% of people expect to see some sort of automation and they want to be able to bypass that and talk to you. The trust just isn't there. A lot of you can train a bot very effectively. You can also not. So I think for us, it's a matter of okay, what are the simple things? Like, what are the really easy things? It's like, okay, I'm in this part of the process. I can just this person is stuck for 20 seconds. We can initiate a chatbot and serve them an appropriate article or serve them the appropriate like the queries what you're trying to do. There's some really basic, simple processes and understanding what those are. But always getting people an out like, nope, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to a person. Um, you, I think where a lot of businesses kind of go wrong is they get, well, we can automate everything. You can do that.
That is an
Should
option.
you? But what's the right decision? You can automate everything. I could probably, in theory, I would never do this, but in theory, I could get rid of our whole support team and automate everything. That would be a horrible experience for our members. I'd save a lot of money. I'd pay whatever. That would be a terrible experience for our members because the subject matter is too complicated. Or because we don't get members. They want to call. Some members just call us, talk to us because they know we're going to pick up. Those things cannot be like thrown aside and considered trivial or unimportant or, I know that you want to have this certain experience, but I don't know what you think. Like that's a surefire way to fail. So I think we just try to be really mindful of, okay, what are the things that do make sense to be automated? And what are the things that we know this is maybe a bit too complicated? We're just going to put you right through someone always having the opportunity to get to first.
Yeah, I saw a meme or a video or something not too long ago where it's like, who else, calls customer service, and not to confuse customer service, customer experience, but who else calls customer service and just immediately, starts screaming at the phone, like, I want to talk to a person. I'm like, I'm that
Yeah.
person, not to get too personal here, but like, that's
Sure.
me. When I call somebody, maybe I can go through a couple of prompts to where I am getting to the right department. But generally speaking, I want to talk to a person as quickly as possible because they're going to be able to, generally speaking, assist me quicker. But again, another tangent. And nobody wants to hear about what my problems are or whatever. So this is great for a larger company that can have a chief experience officer. Amazing. Also, if you're looking, I'm going to test my business partners out here to see if whether or not they listen or not. But if you're looking for a chief experience officer, please consider me, because like I said, I think that would
Yes.
be my dream job. And if they don't say anything to me, I know they don't listen.
Mhm.
um, but that's great for someone who can have a full department geared towards that investor journey, that client journey, that customer experience. What about those small businesses? What advice would you have to them where, you know, less than 25 people and, a good majority of them are involved in some sort of sales and marketing, some sort of back office, and through these different departments, they don't have the time or the resources to dedicate someone to that. How would you address like going about thinking through that experience? And also, just from a time perspective, everything that you do, right? The gathering the data, the understanding it, the evolving, like what advice would you give to someone that's just overwhelmed with everything else?
Yeah, that's a great question. Uh, and it kind of goes back to like what I said earlier, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. So really what it comes down to is how important is it to you or your leadership? Most of the time, like it's shocking that how much businesses rely on their customers and don't have customers, you don't have business, right? But like, so you rely on these people to come be the repeat customers. You know, repeat customers, that's also a problem. Um, but how little a lot of the leadership invests in this. I think it's just gonna happen, or it's a lot more complicated than I think. At least you're doing it in an intentional way. So really, you kind of have to, as a small business where you're wearing all the hats. Maybe you don't have the resourcing you need. It's really a matter of reflecting on what are my priorities? What is important to me? Okay, it is important to me that I have great a great customer experience, keep people coming back, have them choose me over, um, you know, the next or the competitor, whoever that is. Because that's what it comes down to. Customers go back to the place they had the best experience. You see it time and time again. I mean, look at Apple. People, once you're an Apple person, you're probably an Apple person for life. I know that's me, like because I have great experiences with them. I don't even consider the other option. So maybe you have to kind of find what are my priorities as business leader. It does come from leadership. So if the leaders in the organization, especially small ones, say really put it to them into practice, make it part of their values, make it part of their mission that customers experience is everybody's responsibility, then you can kind of break it up among the group. Like, okay, sales and marketing, this is how you play your part in this experience, and this is what here are the outcomes, the measurable outcomes that we're looking for when we're talking about customer experience. And you don't necessarily need like a chief experience officer for these, but you do need somebody who's willing to champion that mission and champion that message and remind people why it's important. Because it may not be the sexiest thing, it's often overlooked, but it's probably one of the more critical things you can do for your business. And it's hard and it's everyone's responsibility, but your leadership really say this is why it's important, make it part of your mission, make sure everybody understands how they play a part in that. And then when you have to talk a whole relief and thinking, okay, how am I person or how is my team impacting the customer experience and what we're doing, that can go a long way. And so
Yeah. So mentioning team, let's stay there for a minute. Specifically to your role or industry, right? You all are the only offering that can collect these royalties and then pay them out. So as a team leader, how do you keep your team motivated and consistently thinking about that experience when there is no competitor, right?
no, can see that. I think what's been helpful for us, one, and like I talked about before, like our CEO. Because yeah, we are the only collective music organization that can um, definite is sort of like a license, therefore collect these digital audio and mechanical royalties in the US. It's very specific. And so it's like when you're the only one, our CEO could have easily said, well, it doesn't matter, get these, but that's not the approach he took. Service is actually one of our core values. And you set from the beginning, serves that for everything you do. It would have been a lot easier, probably more cost effective, just to kind of have a basic run-of-the-mill inbox that run emails will get to it eventually, but that wasn't his vision for this. So it starts there. Like, what is your leader's vision? And when I came on board, and he ventured out and found someone that wasn't doing this in the music industry because it was something that the music industry doesn't traditionally do very well. Actually, if you look at these companies, you're just now starting to see some of these companies hiring this type of team. And he's like, I want to set the bar. I want to have the best service in the industry. And I said, cool, no problem. I can do that. So it's really about like reinforcing with the team, we're the best at this. Like we've set the bar in the industry. People are starting to try to copy what we do. Um, and which is very flattering. And then making sure to celebrate about when we get these amazing call outs at conferences or in our survey feedback. We survey all of our members every time they interact with us, asking them about their experience. That's how we get a lot of really critical data. And every time, often we see people raving about it, we make sure the team knows and hears that, and they feel validating what they're doing. With like some of the teams that maybe aren't directly customer facing, like our product team, we partner with very closely, and we're able to kind of sell, like they see these wins and they see people commenting the product and knowing that the product is built based off of their feedback. They're more motivated. So it's really, it started with our CEO, really just reinforcing like, yeah, we don't have to do this, but we're really, really good at it. Like, we're the best, and now we're trying to do what we're doing. And that's pretty cool. So I think that's how we're really, and we take a lot of pride in the service that we offer. And it's something that people are just really proud of. They feel value in their work. They feel that they're important when you're contributing to an important matter. And so it's pretty easy actually to feel motivated to want to succeed of that.
Yeah, I mean, people definitely say, imitation is the best form of flattery. So that always feels good. Let's flip it upside down. It's amazing that your CEO took the approach that he did. Obviously, that's, first first option, right? But let's flip that upside down for a second, and you're a business owner who has a partner, or you're kind of the person that within your team has championed this whole experience, and the other folks on your team, whether it be a business partner or whatever, are not taking the approach that yours is taking. And it could be for multiple reasons. It could be because they're just not geared that way. It could be, laziness. It could be whatever. It could be just because they're highly focused on providing a product or service. How do you go about trying to communicate to them the necessity of focusing on such a thing?
Yeah. Change management is probably one of the more challenging things about leadership. You know, and especially when you've got folks who are really hyper focused on their lane. This is my job. My job isn't to talk to people. My job isn't to worry about these things. My job is to do X, Y, Z. And that's something, I mean, that was definitely a big challenge that I had to overcome and our team had to overcome, is because, a lot of our team came from the music industry where they weren't necessarily used to, oh no, we're going to offer this next level of service. It's like kind of getting out of that status quo. So I say, one, like when you're engaging with a team member who maybe isn't aligned with the same values that you have, or doesn't understand why this is important, just having a very honest conversation and asking questions, saying, like, help me understand, like, what do you view your role as, and how do you view that you're bringing, what, like, are you bringing the company? How do you value your role? What is important to you? And maybe trying to connect, like, based off what they say, connect, like, some of the things that they value personally, what they take pride in, and tying that back to okay, well, here's how this impacts the customer. This is how it can impact it more. And this is how we can elevate your role or have you add more value to the company. Just trying to make those human connections, like understanding what motivates them and tying that back to that journey. Um, Sometimes it's not that simple, and you really have to make it black and white. And there have been scenarios where I've quite literally pulled up a call recording at a more escalated matter who was impacted by this business decision that we made that was not thought of, I'm the voice of the customer. I haven't listened to it because they're not the ones that got to deal with it, right? Like whenever you design a certain process that customer experiences a certain thing, it's the associate, the customer service person who has to solve that problem. And that's why it's also easy for people to kind of put that back in mind. They're not ones that have to clean up the mess. And unfortunately, and this is a PSA for everybody listening, be nice to the customer service person you're talking to. They didn't make the decisions. They didn't design these processes. They're there to help you. And I'm not saying everyone's really great at it, but it's not their fault. So, anyway. But like, sometimes I pull those calls and I said, listen to this. But if this agreed you, how would you feel? And really try to just make it real for them. Then maybe also flip that and be like, wow, I don't want so just stick that call ever have to do that again.
Yeah.
Kind of putting that in it and also making them empathize with the situation, however they're going to, which is most.
Yeah. So I told you before we started recording, I was going to try to work this book in somehow, some way. Rather than it happening naturally, I'm just going to kind of force it to happen.
Sure.
What about unintended consequences of things that you implement for a specific purpose, right? And thinking through those and evaluating it and evolving it. And the example that I'm going to give is from a book called Excellence Wins by Horst Schultz, who is a co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. And he was maniacal about evolving that customer experience in their hotels. And he would look at everything across the board. And one of the examples he gives in the book is like when they would design a hotel and making sure efficiencies flowed and whatnot, and then receiving feedback that it was taking an extreme amount of time to get room service. And so they spent like 3 weeks evaluating why it took so long to get room service and why this was causing such a pain. And they thought through, everything. And then it comes out to be that, they designed the hotel in a specific way, but when they did so, it meant that the maid service, room service, all these folks were all having the same elevator. And because of the carts being smaller or something along those lines for the maid service, they would block the elevator so that they could get back and forth to the supply room quickly. Obviously, that was not done intentionally. Obviously, became a big pain point for the hotel. How do you think through those unintended consequences and just make sure that you're consistently evolving? And we'll end it here just because I'm getting long-winded now. This is normal. So if you're listening, I've kept it pretty in wraps for 19 episodes, but on a normal basis, I just get long-winded. How do you think through that constant evolution and like addressing those unintended consequences of something that you implemented?
Yeah. I think that's where, in terms of like continuous improvement, cost improvement is really critical. So, like I mentioned before, I'm a Lean Six Sigma master backup. That is not a writing. That is a
Explain it just in case anyone doesn't know. Explain what that means.
I know. I often say it. I want to say that people, oh my god, I'm like, it's not right. It's
well, and if you know Lindsay, you know that that's like believable that she would be a black belt. So anyway, continue.
Yeah, so Lean Six Sigma is it's a process improvement framework where you're taking the voice of the customer experience in balancing it with business processes and here's to streamline your processes with the voice of the customer in mind so that you're seeing these you're improving things, you're gathering that feedback, and you're monitoring them as you go. You're making changes as you go. So all in the heart of like continuous improvement. So you're gonna miss sometimes. Like that's gonna happen. Maybe unintended consequences. You're gonna is that or even especially if you're building something from scratch. If you're a small business owner, sort of you kind of build like you don't have much to go off of. You're designing a lot of these things from scratch and they have some data here or there. It's brand new and it's inevitable that you're gonna launch something, it's maybe not gonna work or it's gonna have a miss somewhere. You need to go back and improve it. And then those improvements eventually are going to time out. We're going to need to revisit it again. So it's this concept of continuous improvement. The framework that I find very powerful that helps ultimate it, find, measure, analyze, improve, control, kind of the basis of what Lean Six Sigma is off of. And really, you don't need to be an expert. Like, yes, I'm a master black belt. I thought it was fun to do that. But you don't need to be an expert in this to be able to follow that simple framework. So defining a problem, what is it that we're trying to solve? And oftentimes we make the mistake of getting a room to start solutioning. We haven't really find the problem. So and do that, you're solving for the symptoms and not the root cause. So really getting to that root cause and figure out what it is you're trying to solve. Analyzing the problem data, like where are we right now? How are we performing? Improve. We'll measure, analyze, improve. Like what are we going to do to make this better? And then control is the part where you measure. Okay, over time, how is this performing? Do we need to revisit? Do we need to pivot? And I think that's just such a strong framework for making sure that, hey, if you missed, that's okay. You know that you missed, and you know where we need to focus and improve and figure out what we need to solve for. And then I think that's very, very critical. Anytime you watch. If you watch it and you're not measuring it, you're not revisiting it, it's huge mistake.
Yeah. Well, Lindsay, this has been fantastic. Knowing you and being a friend, there's no surprise to me that you excel at this job because you take everything that you do so intentional, or you approach everything that you do so intentionally. So I know that you're perfect for this and not me. That's why I don't have the title Chief Experience Officer. But thanks for coming on. For those that want to pick your brain or get in touch with you, learn more about MLC or whatever, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can definitely then Lucy Major, MBA, I think they have here. I got the NLC, visit our website, nlc.com. Follow us on all the social media channels. The NLC YouTube is a really good channel. You really want to learn some stuff from us. Yeah.
I spent some time on there yesterday.
There's a lot on there. Yeah.
There is. I appreciated the content that you provided me in preparation because not everyone does that. So I appreciate your again intentionality there of setting me up for success. But Lindsay, thanks for joining today. Can't wait to release it, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.